by Caracris is 6 p.m. and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Investment gaps, clean energy, and shifting trade flows. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Tuesday, July 28, 2026. I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, businesses in Westmoreland say the parish is being left behind, warning that poor infrastructure is undermining economic development. Also ahead, CDB and SECRE launch a $5.3 million initiative to accelerate clean energy investment across the region. And later, the U.S. trade deficit narrows further as imports continue to slow, offering fresh signs of changing trade patterns. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with claims that underfunded infrastructure is undermining business confidence in Westmoreland, Jamaica. Business leaders in Westmoreland are saying that inadequate infrastructure funding is threatening the parish's economic recovery post-Hurricane Melissa. The concern was raised by Westmoreland's Mayor, Danry Delancey, during a PNP press conference earlier today. He says members of the Westmoreland Chamber of Commerce have voiced frustration that the parish appears to be receiving less attention than other areas, despite suffering extensive damage from Hurricane Melissa.
At a recent meeting in Savlamar, that was attended by Minister Albin Hill. This meeting was put on by the Westmoreland Chamber of Commerce. Some businessmen stood up and spoke, and some of them were saying that they feel as if Westmoreland is now a forgotten parish. They wanted to know whether or not Westmoreland was being punished for voting for the People's National Party. And believe me, when these people spoke, they spoke with passion about it. And these people speaking weren't political activists. One man actually said that he supports the JLP, but he's disappointed at the way how the parish is being treated.
He says business leaders are now awaiting a response from the government on the issue.
Credit to Minister Albin Hill. He said that we will be taking the plight of the people back to cabinet. Don't know if he has done so as yet, but we are looking forward to hearing whether or not that was done.
That was Westmoreland's Mayor, Danry Delancey. British Jamaican entrepreneur Nathaniel Pete is calling for a fundamental shift in how the diaspora contributes to Jamaica's economy, arguing that long-term investment, not just remittances, can unlock greater business growth and economic development. In an interview with CBX Business News, Pete says the opportunities to invest in Jamaica already exist, but many members of the diaspora are simply unaware of them.
It's important that the diaspora thinks wider than just remittance. There are tangible ways of investing in Jamaica. There is the next gen that are interested in investing in Jamaica, but they don't know how. But there's mechanisms here in Jamaica. You have brokers that can help you to invest in the stock exchange. I mean, the Jamaica Stock Exchange in 2018, 2019 was the best performing stock junior market in the world. Bloomberg highlighted that. All of these big Forbes and everybody talk about Jamaica. And when you see the big countries coming into Jamaica, you know something's happening with the economy.
He believes Jamaica's improving economic environment makes this the right time for the diaspora to broaden how it invests in the country.
Jamaica is ripe for investment right now. The borrowing that has happened has reduced. The national debt has reduced. This is the time for diaspora investment, whether that be through agriculture, whether that be through land, whether that be through stocks, whether it directly be through trading, whether it be through, putting into a social entrepreneur or even an entrepreneur that's trying to get product out of Jamaica. The diaspora, you guys, the ability for you to do that exists right now.
That was British Jamaican entrepreneur Nathaniel Pete. And while Pete is encouraging the diaspora to look beyond remittances, new data suggests the traditional flow of money from overseas may already be slowing. Slowing remittance inflows are raising fresh concerns about consumer spending, with fewer overseas transfers threatening household purchasing power and demand across the wider economy. Market Research Services Executive Chairman Dr. Don Anderson told CBX Business News that while the drop appears modest at 3%, it could have wider economic implications.
We have, as consumers, depended on the remittance inflow for making ends meet. A lot of the people who receive remittances use it for meeting their daily household needs. So when you have a 3% fall off in remittance inflow into the country, it does in fact bode badly for the consumer, because this is what is going to challenge them to meet their daily household expenditure. And therefore, this is a factor that one has to watch. It is down down to 28%.
Anderson says the decline may also reflect the changing circumstances facing some Jamaicans overseas.
We believe that a lot of this has to do with probably Jamaicans who are staying under the radar now and who are probably not exposing themselves to the extent that they're in a position to send money home back, and that is impacting persons who are receiving remittances to be able to really meet their daily household expenditure.
That was Market Research Services Executive Chairman Dr. Don Anderson. And in corporate news, Edufocal Limited is seeking shareholder approval to rebrand as Wallstron Limited, marking a significant shift from its roots as an education technology company to a diversified holding company. The proposal forms part of resolutions to be considered at the company's annual general meeting on September 10. If approved, the name change would accompany an expanded corporate purpose covering education technology, technology services, commerce, and property and real estate. The move comes as the company continues its restructuring efforts following a challenging period. In its 2025 annual report, Edufocal says it has returned to operating profitability, recording an operating profit of 23.9 million Jamaican dollars compared with an operating loss of $235.3 million in 2024. while revenue declined 28% as the company moved away from one-off projects. Its net loss narrowed 49% to $29.4 million, reflecting lower operating costs and a stronger focus on recurring revenue. Chief Executive Officer Gordon Swaby says the restructuring phase is largely complete, with the company's priorities now centered on expanding recurring business, growing its education platforms across the Caribbean, and strengthening its balance sheet. We go now to updates from the Bank of Jamaica on how the currency markets traded today. In Tuesday's currency trading session, the US dollar is selling for $158.54, the Canadian for $113.08, the pound sterling for $210.25, while the going rate for the euro is $185.16. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 110 stocks, of which 42 advanced, 54 declined, and 14 traded firm. Leading the winners are Jamaica Public Service Company 7%, Medical Disposables and Supplies, Margaritaville Turks, and Innovative Energy Group, while leading the losers are G West Corporation Ordinary Shares, JFP Limited, ISP Finance Services, and Elite Diagnostic. The main index advanced by 2,136.74 points to close at 367,912.82 points. However, the junior market index declined by 47.86 points to close at 2,960.58 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we're talking about the prospectus. A prospectus is a legal document that provides potential investors with important information about a company or investment offering before they decide to invest. It outlines details such as the business, the amount of money being raised, how the funds will be used, and the key risks involved. Companies issuing shares or other securities use a prospectus to help investors make informed decisions by giving them a clear understanding of the investment opportunity. Reading a prospectus carefully is an important step before investing, as it allows investors to assess both the potential rewards and the risks. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments.
This project marks the celebration of our 30th Hall of Fame and aims to highlight the achievements, challenges, and invaluable lessons of those who have shaped and are shaping the future of our economy. Our aim is to celebrate the voices and stories of 30 remarkable leaders in Jamaica's private sector. Join us as we explore these narratives of resilience, leadership, and vision.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. The Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, and the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, CRE, have introduced a $5.3 million program to expand the region's pipeline of investment-ready clean energy projects. The Accelerated Sustainable Energy and Resilience Transition 2030 program, or ASSERT 2030, will provide financing and technical support to help Caribbean countries overcome barriers to renewable energy development. Funded primarily through the CDB's Special Resources Fund with support from international partners and CRE, the initiative will strengthen energy planning, data systems, and regional cooperation. Renewable energy currently accounts for about 12% of the Caribbean's energy mix, while several countries continue to face high electricity costs, dependence on imported fuel, and growing climate risks. CRE will lead implementation over the next 30 months, working with governments, utilities, and regulators to strengthen institutional capacity and increase women's participation in the sector. The CDB says the program should help countries attract sustainable investment, improve energy security, and advance their climate goals. The Cayman Islands government has approved 13 reforms aimed at speeding up development approvals while strengthening environmental oversight. The reforms are intended to reduce regulatory delays and create a more transparent and predictable planning system for businesses, developers, and investors. Addressing the nation on Monday, Premier Andre Ebanks says the initiative is intended to create a planning system that supports both economic growth and environmental protection, which he says are not mutually exclusive.
The NCFC government does not accept that we have to choose between a thriving economy and a beautiful natural environment. We can have both. That's the whole premise behind a new initiative called Cayman Forward. The status quo isn't working for anyone. Not for those who build, not for those who protect. So this time, we chose to try something different.
Initial measures will include delegating some routine planning decisions, setting timelines for regulatory approvals, and increasing transparency in the review process. Premier Ebanks explains.
Delegating certain planning decisions from the CPA to professional planning officers so routine applications get a faster response. Third, introducing binding timelines for how quickly the National Conservation Council, the Central Planning Authority, and the Development Control Board in the Sister Islands must respond to referrals and applications. No more open-ended waiting. And fourth, requiring that these entities regularly publish their minutes and their reasoning so the public can see how decisions are made. We are also advancing work on an updated National Development Plan, which will come to Parliament later this year. Cayman Forward has given us a clear roadmap for a shared decision framework based on evidence and collaboration.
That was Premier of the Cayman Islands, Andre Ebanks. The St. Kitts and Nevis government is seeking greater private sector participation in scrap metal collection and exports as it looks to build a recycling industry that creates new business opportunities. Over the past 3 years, authorities have removed more than 1,000 derelict vehicles, including 209 during the last 3 months. The program has also resulted in the export of approximately 30 40-foot containers of scrap metal, creating a market for recyclable waste. Speaking during a recent In Focus discussion, Environment, Sustainable Development and Climate Action Minister Dr. Joyelle Clark says exporting the material is helping the government offset part of the cost of removing abandoned vehicles.
Every vehicle moved comes with a cost, over $100 US. Can you imagine that? Every single vehicle left comes with a cost, but thankfully there is a way to recover the cost, because we have since shipped about 40 feet containers exporting scrap metal, which means we collect that vehicle, we pay, but then we can ship and we can recover some cost.
Dr. Clark says her vision is for private businesses to play a greater role in the industry, taking the lead in collecting and exporting scrap metal while creating economic value from recyclable waste.
What I want personally is that it's not the Solid Waste Management Corporation that's doing this, but it's a small business, it's a private enterprise. You go, you purchase the crane or the actual equipment needed to move the vehicle, it's charged, we pay, you ship, you make a business of it, because we said here on the show before that there is so much value in waste that people don't understand. For now, Solid Waste Management Corporation is assuming the cost and shipping to recover so that we can continue. And in the last 3 months of this exercise, we are still in the Keyon Connery area. We have all the other villages to go. So thousands of vehicles can be moved. I hope somebody who's listening me now could have the bright idea to go and find a way to make this their small business and do it, because we want to partner with people.
The Environment, Sustainable Development and Climate Action Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Joyelle Clark. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 16 securities, of which 3 advanced, 9 declined, and 4 traded firm. Today's winners are National Flour Mills, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, and Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago, while leading the losers are National Enterprises, Agostini Limited, the West Indian Tobacco Company, and CIBC Caribbean Bank. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All-TNT Index declined by 4.66 points to close at 1,444.51. The Composite Index also declined, but by 3.23 points to close at 1,012.35. The Cross-Listed Index dropped 0.24 points to close at 77.04, while the SME Index remained at 76.48. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
To open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Safe to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using simplified customer due diligence requirements, also called CDD.
Welcome back. In international news, the U.S. goods trade deficit narrowed again in June as imports fell faster than exports, signaling that trade flows continue to normalize after last year's tariff disruptions. Preliminary data showed the trade gap narrowed to $101.5 billion from a 14-month high of $105.9 billion in May. Exports declined 1.8% to $204.7 billion for a second second straight month, led by weaker shipments of industrial supplies, food products, and capital goods. Imports recorded an even steeper decline, decreasing 2.6% to $306.2 billion, with broad-based weakness across consumer goods, vehicles, capital goods, and industrial supplies. For the first 6 months of the year, the cumulative trade deficit narrowed by more than $180 billion when compared with the same period in 2025. While trade patterns continue to stabilize following last year's tariff announcements, uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy remains a key risk for global commerce. Markets are now turning their attention to the Federal Reserve. Gold prices fell about 1% to roughly $4,030 an ounce on Tuesday as a stronger U.S. dollar and uncertainty ahead of the Federal Reserve's policy decision reduced demand for the precious metal. The dollar remained near a 4-week high as investors increased bets that the Fed could raise interest rates. Despite President Donald Trump's repeated calls for lower interest rates, markets continue to expect the Federal Reserve may raise borrowing costs again in September, keeping the higher for longer outlook intact. Easing tensions in the Middle East also reduced demand for gold after lower oil prices signaled a reduced risk of major supply disruptions. Elsewhere in the United States, U.S. home prices resumed their upward trend in May, exceeding expectations after recording a slight decline the previous month. Home prices financed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac rose 0.3% in May 2026, rebounding from a 0.1% decline in April and surpassing market expectations of a 0.2% increase. Across the 9 U.S. Census divisions, seasonally adjusted monthly price changes ranged from 0.6% decline in the Pacific Division to a 1.4% gain in the East-South Central Division. On an annual basis, home prices increased 2.2% in May, up from a 2% year-over-year rise in April. Regional annual price growth varied from a 0.3% decline in the Pacific Division to a 4.5% increase in the Middle Atlantic Division. And in Latin America, Brazil's inflation eased more than expected in mid-July as lower food prices offset continued increases in housing and transportation costs. Consumer prices rose just 0.06% during the period, the slowest mid-month inflation reading in nearly a year. Food prices recorded their sharpest decline at 0.66%, while the cost of meals eaten outside the home continued to increase by 0.55%. Housing was the biggest source of inflationary pressure, rising 0.97% as residential electricity prices climbed 3.03% following the introduction of the yellow tariff flag and regulated tariff adjustments in several cities. Transportation costs edged up 0.11% with an 11.7% surge in airfares outweighing lower fuel prices as concerns over Middle East oil supply disruptions eased. Meanwhile, health and personal care prices increased 0.28%, supported by higher costs for personal hygiene products. On an annual basis, Brazil's inflation rate eased to 4.52% from 4.58% in June. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break. And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, businesses in Westmoreland say the parish is being left behind. Regionally, CDB and SECRE unveil $5.3 million clean energy initiative. And internationally, U.S. trade deficit narrows further as imports continue to slow. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.